Hello, patrons, and welcome to this patron-exclusive episode of Beyond the Screenplay. I'm Michael Tucker. I'm, of course, here with the Beyond the Screenplay team, Trisha Rand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello, hello.
And Alex Calleros.
I see you.
And
Perfect.
yeah, today we are talking about Avatar, The Way of Water, directed by James Cameron, screenplay by James Cameron, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver. All right, so hot-ish take episode. Some takes hotter than others, as we'll soon hear from Brian. So Alex, Trish, and I all went and saw Avatar: Way of Water together in IMAX 3D very early in the morning on a Saturday.
It was at 10 a.m. It was not very early. I just need to clear that up.
Which was perfect, I think.
Yeah.
Caffeinated 10 a.m.
Yeah.
3-hour movie. Let's do it.
Yes. And just like initial thoughts are just to like on a technical level, it is extremely jaw-droppingly impressive. No notes when it comes to the CGI, at least as shown on 3D in IMAX. Variable frame rate, 90% of the time worked for me. I'm excited to talk about that more. And as a story cinema experience, I enjoyed it more than the first one. I was emotionally moved at moments. It was like a decent way to spend 3.5 hours of your life. It could have been less of my life and I would have been fine with it. But I've definitely spent worse time in a movie. So overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was like cool, interesting choices about like where the story goes and what it's focusing on. And just we can talk about all those things, where it's going to sit in the Avatar quadrilogy, 5-7 trilogy, whatever it's going to be. Saga. But overall, if I had to do thumbs up, thumbs down, I would do thumbs up for Way of Water. Brian, you have the hottest take. Tell me about what you're thinking in this moment.
Yeah, I am. It is so 2 days after you guys saw it, which is also Tuesday. That's how days work. And I am less than an hour from credits rolling. Also saw it in IMAX 3D. So forgive me if I don't know characters' names and I'm calling Spider Avatarzan because I can't remember what their names are.
That's fair. Although he does have the most memorable name of anybody in the cast.
Right.
I remember his name.
Yeah, got that one.
And the most memorable loincloth, everything.
The
yep.
whole thing.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, what movie? My overall feelings are, like the first movie, just sort of not really going for complicated plots or really surprising stuff. Everything kind of felt pretty familiar. But unlike the first movie, it didn't feel so familiar that I felt like I had already seen it before. Like I felt like I didn't know, where things were going to go. I didn't know what they were going to focus on. It did get into a pretty constant rhythm of like these characters, then these characters, and then the music changes and here's the bad guys, right? And they're doing some stuff and then back to like this thing and then here's the bad guy. But like, that's just kind of movie stuff, right? Technically, as you said, just holy crap. Just what an, there's the Martin Scorsese quote of Marvel movies being theme park rides or whatever. This actually felt like a theme park ride. Like it felt like I was at Star Tours or, like doing some VR game or something where I was just constantly on a roller coaster for 3 hours and it was just moving along and really exciting. Sometimes the 3D was like if there was too many levels of stuff on screen, like there's like 10 people on screen and like some stuff in the foreground, some stuff in the background. I felt like my brain was trying to understand where everything was more than like listen to dialogue. And then by the time I was like, okay, I think I've got the, oh no, we're on to the next thing. But for just everything else, like just the, I'm on a bird or a whale and I'm riding through the thing, or just even two people talking, like 3D was more often than not just gorgeous and really worked for me. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it, but overall just sort of like you would expect, not an amazing story, but an amazing technical achievement.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, so rewatching the first Avatar movie recently, it didn't live up to my memory of the theater experience, which I guess is inevitable because IMAX 3D is different from watching on a TV. But it was really just like, yeah, like this movie is so generic. It's both so incredibly specific and like imaginative, but also like deeply generic in its Pocahontas story. And I just know exactly what each beat is like broadcasting at me to feel, and I'm not feeling it. And it's just kind of this one, like Cameron got me. Like he got me with his Cameronness, and I was feeling the things that I'm supposed to feel at all the moments he wanted me to feel them. He, with this one, I think did what I feel like the first movie was for some other people who were obsessed with it, or whoever those Avatar fans are that had like post Pandora depression or whatever. Like, I feel like that was like the test run, like demo project to get the technology right with like a more generic story. And this was like the actual movie, was how I felt walking out of it. Cause I was like, that's like, I feel what I was supposed to feel in the first movie. Expectations also play a huge role, I imagine, because as we talked about in our Avatar podcast, Michael and I went in expecting like aliens and got Avatar. And with this movie, I was like, I expect another Avatar movie. And I got another Avatar movie.
Yeah.
And I also cried a little bit. Like, I got the thing that I expected and more.
You got Avatar and Free Willy.
Exactly. Yeah. No, whales help. Whales make a big difference. But yeah, no, but in general, like the 3D was also so much better than I remember 3D being in theaters. Like I think Avatar kicked off that whole 3D era, and most films during that era weren't that great in 3D. And I kind of had just dismissed the technology as like, that was a thing we did and now it's done. But I feel like, yeah, the Cameron Avatar approach to 3D, probably the fact that everything is animated essentially, and he has perfect control of, I guess, I don't know the technology well, but however you do it, it felt so precise and so like tangible in a way that the more like 2D cutout, like retrofitted 3D on most superhero movies just feels so lame. This one, it did feel like a theme park, right? Like you were saying, Brian, it felt like this was a special technology at a Disney park that I got to go to. So it was just wonderful to sit in a theater and look at beautiful animated images in really cool 3D for 3 hours. So I had a great time in a way that I did not expect, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. We'll see if it holds up on the second viewing. It may not at all, but my memory of the first viewing is very, very positive.
Are you going to try to see it again in IMAX 3D again?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm not going to risk any other format at this point.
Right.
It worked. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And Trisha.
Yeah, a lot of what you guys have already said. This is a good movie. And like, I had a good time watching it. I was very moved in places, as you were, Alex. I do want to say at the outset that since the original Avatar movie has come out, a lot of things have changed. And one of those is that I'm much older now, and I'm also a parent. And so being a parent in this movie, as the main characters now are, and a big part of the story being about parenting your children and how to do that is a sucker punch to me, and rude. So just like acknowledging that bias going into the way that like the story evoked an emotional response from me. That being said, I've thought about it a lot since we walked out of the theater. And I think like you guys, I was just knocked over by how it looked and the immersive experience of watching it. And just like, you walk out and you're just like, oh, I can breathe. This is what normal air is. This is what the world is. And it doesn't look like how it's been looking for the last 4 hours. And whoa, okay. And just feeling that like James Cameron has like deep sea diver analogy. Like you got to rise slowly, right? Or you get the bends.
Slowly decompress.
Yeah, exactly. So, but since that time when I have decompressed from the whole experience, I've kind of been like, it looks absolutely amazing. And the length is perhaps justified in a way if you think about it as this like big sprawling environmental epic, right? Like I feel like James Cameron is trying to make like Blue Planet or, Planet Earth,
Right.
kind of like one of these huge, like Planet Pandora. This is his like
Right.
nature documentary, like his, 5-hour nature documentary to the celebrating all of the wildlife and the environment of this planet. And I think if you think about it in those terms, you're like, sure, the fact that the whole middle hour of this is really just like wildlife and whales, and then like occasional little episodes of like, oh no, the teens are fighting,
Yeah.
like interspersed with more whales. If you think about it that way, you're just like, well, yeah, but those images of those whales are like, they're amazing. But then I'm like, but we have real whales. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. You spend a lot of time and a whole lot of money shooting these, like inventing these whales, presumably, and spent a lot of time on them in the cut of the movie in order to convince me that the people who hunt the whales are the bad guys, which I think is an interesting aspect of this whole story because it kind of pops up very late in the movie, and then turns out to be sort of critically important about the way that we know at the outset that the unobtainium is being strip mined out of Pandora by the bad guys. We know that like 20 minutes into the original Avatar movie at least, and it takes us 2 hours and 20 minutes maybe to get to that in this movie, to like what the environmental problem is that's happening here. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, is this really actually the environmental epic that James Cameron is treating it as? Has the story work been done to support the like runtime of this, like from a narrative perspective? Like, because I don't know. I just wish like, I don't wish that he had made Planet Earth or whatever, although I think he would do a great job at that. But like, I do wonder if like the mishmash of like nature documentary and honestly thin on the ground plot here. Mm-hmm. It's like Quaritch wants to get Sully.
Because he's a leader of the resistance, but he also ran away.
Yeah, for personal revenge reasons. Basically, like Quaritch wants revenge on Sully, and he's going to spend all the money and take all the time until he does. And that's the whole plot of the movie. And I just wonder if that actually squares with the like amount of time and the like spectacle of the environment and everything. Because it doesn't, I don't know if it actually is an epic in genre from a story and theme perspective. And in fairness to James Cameron, he's made some really amazing actual epics in scope in terms of the story and genre. And I am not actually convinced that this is one.
I mean, would you say Titanic is an epic? Because I feel like it's more of a romance drama.
But it's also a disaster movie.
Sure.
Like, and so I think that the runtime, you can hang, at least half of Titanic's runtime on the disaster movie genre.
I think exactly half because of the midpoint.
I wasn't doing math in my head when I said that, but I think you can justify it with the disaster movie genre being blended into the love story and the dramatic aspects of it. And the disaster movie thematically weds perfectly in with like the classism and the sort of like larger themes in that film. So right. I don't know. I want to get into it. And I'm not, like I would not be the first person to say that I think Way of Water is too long. I don't think that's exactly a hot take coming from me. But
people had that opinion months ago when the runtime was announced.
Well, I was just willing to forgive it. When I walked out of there, I was like, James Cameron makes epics. This is an epic. It's an epic. Like, everybody stop complaining. But now I'm like, maybe we can complain though, actually, because is it really an epic? I don't know.
Yeah, my answer to your question is yeah. Is it an epic? Was it worth the runtime plot-wise? No, but I feel like that's what's almost so impressive about it is that for how little plot there is, I was way more engaged than I should have been at basically every moment. And I do think there are very strange structural things happening. I read a brief review that used the phrase emotional storytelling, like James Cameron's like reliance on emotional storytelling. And I feel like that's how it works or how he gets you to stay involved moment to moment, because the bad guys, they're really evil. The good guys are really good. Like you never feel ambiguously, basically ever about anything. There's like a little moment with Captain Military at the end where he like chooses his son over whatever, and it's like, oh, cool, you have a character like 3 hours into this. But it's like every scene has like extreme emotions. You know, the most dramatic, like the most melodramatic possible outcome of any scene is what's going to happen. And I feel like that keeps you emotionally engaged to the point where I felt like it was almost abusive. And I was like angry at him of like, I'm so upset that you're going to do this to me. And I know it's going to work. Like I'm going to be sad that this child is going to die, or that they're going to be trapped over here, or that like, I know it's going to work, and I hate myself. It's kind of like Baby Yoda, the way that Baby Yoda is cheat codes. It's just like, ugh. So that's my initial take. It's like, I don't think that the plot on paper needs or supports this runtime, but the execution of it and all the things, all the tools that he utilizes somehow makes it an engaging experience nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned emotional storytelling, and I think there's dynamics at work here where like we're constantly doing this up and down motion with we go from a scene of elation and nature wonder to suddenly, oh my God, is this kid going to die right now? Back to nature wonder. You know, like we see that with the whole sequence where the outcast son, you know, gets tricked to go out into the dangerous part of the reef or outside the reef. Gets chased by giant, you know, Star Wars prequel monster.
Because there's always a bigger fish.
And he gets rammed by the bigger fish.
Yeah.
And then what follows is like a really, you know, touching scene where he like makes friends with a whale. And I think we're constantly going on that roller coaster with the movie. And so you're kind of just along for the ride and you never plateau anywhere for too long to start to notice that, maybe not much has happened actually in the main thrust of the plot. But I mean, I think about another epically long movie that I loved this last year, which is RRR, the Tollywood blockbuster. And that movie also completely just rides on melodrama and dynamics, where we just go from the highest highs to the lowest lows to the most shocking reveals. And like, there's something about that I just love. I miss the experience of a movie being unembarrassed to just be like hard on its sleeve emotions all the way through, but in a way that isn't just like tacked on. Like there are characters and there are situations developed where these things make sense to play out the way they do. They're not just like sudden right turns for no reason. So it's a weird thing where it's like, maybe you're right. Maybe you guys are right. Technically, this shouldn't be this long. This isn't an epic, et cetera, et cetera. But my like subjective experience of the length of this movie was entertained and moved. So I also like can't complain personally about it. Yeah. I
would say though, really quick, that I think RR is an epic. Like it's operatic in the movements of what's happening. Like I feel like every scene, something dramatic is happening and turning the plot in a new direction. And as Trisha pointed out, the plot of this movie doesn't really begin for like 2 hours almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a disjointedness between the things going on in this movie, and that's kind of what makes it feel like, wait, what is this movie exactly? Because one, you have the, you know, so unnecessary, like it's weird that we're just already accepting that this movie was just like, yeah, it's the bad guy from the first movie, but he is an avatar. Like
the first act was rough.
But I feel like any other movie, we'd be like, oh man, what a corny thing. But we're just like, sure, whatever. It's Avatar. It's fine. But then like the plan is we need to get rid of the leader so we can like become friendly with the natives, but also you got to get revenge against him because he probably in the future, from when I'm recording this video, Avatar me killed me, so go get revenge. Yeah. Right. But then also, as you're pointing out, Trisha, like 2.5 hours in, the blood obtainium from the whales, where they're like, oh no, this makes you not age. So like, that's what we're like, wait, what does this have to do with anything? So it's like you have these different, and then of course you have this just like family drama going on, right? With this, I genuinely loved the 3-way crosscut of the kids saving their parents between Spider and Grace Jr. and Sully Jr. And, and just sort of like the thematic kind of conversation it's having about when, that moment when you realize that you are the kind of person, like your parents are someone who needs help from you and is, et cetera, et cetera. But like, to your point, Trisha, like a lot of the movie wasn't talking about that. And a lot of the movie wasn't talking about the environmental stuff. So it's like, there is a sort of perfect version of all of this stuff where it all thematically is like really, really tight. And is all tied together. And there's a reason, like this thing over here is supporting the ideas of this thing over here. But that being said, I had the same experience as Alex, which I was just like, I was just having a good time the whole time, and there were definitely times where I was like, oh, this is a weird thing. Like, why is like Flight of the Conchords here and they're taking the oil out of the whale like suddenly this late in, right? But like otherwise, I was just like genuinely just having a good time for 3 hours. And that's really rare. Like, I feel like even movies that I really, really, even RRR, like there were times where I'm just like, okay, like this is a really, really fun movie, but I'm also kind of like waiting for the next thing to happen. Or I'm kind of like, it's been going on for a bit. And this was, I'm not saying, I love this movie more than other movies that maybe I've had that feeling with, but this was just one of the few times I can remember where I was just genuinely entertained for the entire runtime of the movie.
Well, and you said it right there, Brian, which is, I think that there's a version of this that does tie all of this together neatly and perfectly. And I just like wish for that so deeply because I'm with you. I had a great time. Like I'm, moment to moment in the theater, I was constantly being like gasping at how visually stunning it was, while also finding something emotional to connect to because there is so much emotional storytelling going on, as you guys were saying. And the family story to me is the most interesting one in it. When I heard, I was like, okay, great. You have 4 children. That's a lot of characters. First of all, one of them is going to die for sure.
Yeah.
Not the one we spent a lot of time with, but one of them.
Nope. but the more boring older brother, that guy.
Yeah. Disposable.
Yeah.
Extremely. But God bless him. But then also there's Spider, which I do need to get to. We need to get to
we
Spider.
all do. Oh, wait, sorry. What?
Oh, God. There's so much seeded in to all of those familial character relationships that is really interesting thematically. Like, first of all, Kiri, the movie just, her conception was a mystery. Moving on. I was like, sorry, that's really all we're going to say about it?
Yeah. That blew my mind. Like that was part of the opening act where I was like, okay, I don't know about this movie yet because it's just like, here's the pregnant body in the tank.
Well, we should come back to that. Yeah.
Well, obviously they're making something out of it in the next movie because she's asked a few times now who her father is, and I'm just so tired and they didn't tell us, and I'm like, okay, we'll find out, I guess. But anyway, so there's Kiri. She has this like sense of being a misfit. She's somehow more deeply connected to the planet than everybody else is. So here's my question. Why not, if this poaching of the whales is going on somewhere on Pandora, on the other side of the planet, what if she can sense it? What if even before the humans come back for revenge, there's something deeply wrong with her because there's something deeply wrong with the planet because there's still this environmental thing going on. There's like a way to connect that with Kiri, I feel, that the movie, or Noak, who is the second son who ends up being connected to this whale. Like, I think that's his name.
Loak.
Loak. Thank you. Yeah.
Which I'm sure we're pronouncing perfectly.
Yeah. Listen, my Navi is impeccable. But like with Noak, there's a way potentially to connect him to that, which the movie does, but so much later. There's like all of this stuff that's kind of seeded into the design of the children, and especially Spider. And I do want to get to him. It's like there's all of this interesting, potentially really interesting stuff that has enough and there's enough of them that it could encompass what the movie eventually decides it's going to be about. Like, I think it all could be set up. And if the story is about, you know, one of generational, like, I don't know, I guess you guys pointed out that like the children are going to lead the way, right? The children are going to be the ones who can repair the damage that was done, or this kind of idea of like hope in the future generation of righting the wrongs that the parents have committed in some way or that have been done in the past. That's a beautiful message. I wish that was remotely, I don't know, anywhere like put together or set up in the movie's first act, or really deeply explored in the movie's second act, because I feel like it's just a mess thematically.
So here's kind of my thought on all of this, is that to me, it felt like the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, if we know that there's going to be multiple Avatar movies, it felt a little bit to me like actually maybe even a more complete version of the Fellowship of the Ring, where like by the end I was like, oh, I've enjoyed this movie, and it had an ending in the way that the Fellowship ended, and I was like, wait, what? That was the movie? And then someone was like, there's more coming, and I was like, what? So especially with like the Kiri character, who feels extremely underdeveloped for being such a critical part of everything, right. And yeah, the mysterious birth, like if she's Sigourney Weaver's like clone daughter, and Sigourney Weaver is joined with the planet, is the planet her father? Like, is she just a child of, anyway, I feel like all of that was like teased, like here's like 5% of this character's arc that we're going to see the rest of moving forward. And so part of me almost feels like we can't even evaluate this fully until we see the next 47 movies, because it feels like it's setting up a bigger arc in that respect. And so that's kind of what I keep coming back to, is that I think within this one movie as a self-contained movie, it does have all these problems that you're calling out, Trisha. And I think it would have and could have been better to unite them and do them all good and well. But to me, it also really felt like it's just teeing up a greater thing that maybe as a whole will feel like an epic and will feel thematically unified. But who knows if we'll all live that long.
Yeah, it wasn't Dune Part 1, where it was genuinely like, we're really just doing the first half of the movie. It felt like a complete movie, but it also felt like we're doing the sort of Marvel thing of like, we're just getting started. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think you're pointing out, Trisha, like, yeah, why does the whale thing come so late? And I think it did feel like what you're saying, Michael, that this is the first kickoff of the new Avatar saga. And we do learn early on the big plan the humans have, which is basically to colonize Pandora entirely because Earth is dying.
Right.
So there's this like mega arc that I assume is coming, where it's like full on, we're going to move Earth's population to this planet. What does that mean? And like the whales are just like, this episode of humans colonize Pandora is like, they're like already killing the whales and taking their, anti-aging serum. And so it almost felt like the whales were like, yeah, like this week on Avatar, it's the whales. Like next week, it'll be the different environmental disaster. And so, so in some ways, yeah, it does feel like that Fellowship of the Ring, we're just getting started. And this week on is water and whales. And tune in next week for whatever. Is the next one Air or something? Or is it not I know they released all the titles at one point, but yeah.
Michael's gonna look it up.
I am. I'll Google it over here.
Because I totally know what you mean, Trisha, and I agree that there's like a lot in this movie that it does feel like too much. Especially once again, I keep going back to the first act. The first act felt very messy and very overwhelming, and it's like the amount of like weirdness happening, kind of like the first Avatar, where it's just we get the Jake Sully voiceover, we get all this information thrown at us, and it's like weird choice after weird choice, like immaculate conception, Avatar body in a tank. Bad guy from the last movie had his consciousness downloaded and sent back to Earth to be born into a new Avatar body to come back specifically to like get revenge on Jake Sully. There's a lot of things just felt like, what the hell is this movie? How is this all one movie? And like, why is it all here? And I do wonder if, by the end of the trilogy, quadrilogy, after the 5-gilogy, we're going to look back and it is all part of a big plan that works out or not. We'll see.
Can we please call it a 5-gilogy?
5-gilogy. The Avatar 5-gilogy. What are the titles, Michael?
It's actually harder to find than I thought because they were leaked, but they aren't officially announced. But so the leaked titles are The Way of Water, The Seed Bearer, The Tolkien Writer, Tulkun, and Avatar: The Quest for Awa. So The Seed Bearer is the next one.
I'm going to go on a limb and say the Seed Bearer might tell us who Grace's father is.
Quite possible.
I'm pretty sure the planet impregnated her body or something when they were trying to transfer Sigourney Weaver in the last movie.
She can magic the planet.
They have her avatar in a tank.
Right.
Like it's still it's still there.
But see, in the last movie, they brought her avatar body to the magic tree to try to transfer Sigourney Weaver into the avatar body before her human body died. The transfer failed, but maybe while she was lying there under the spirit tree, it was like, I'm gonna impregnate you with spirit tree magic. Is my theory.
Or uploaded it and then it spawned. Yeah.
But also, isn't her avatar still pregnant?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't notice that.
No, I think it was a flashback when it was pregnant.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird movie.
This movie.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Alex, the first act is doing a ton of work but not very artfully or not
too fast.
It doesn't seem interested in doing it artfully. Yeah. I was sitting directly next to you, Alex, at the scene where they pose in front of a camera for a family picture. I was like, I'm sorry, what camera is this? The Na'vi take pictures?
That was the basketball moment of this movie.
It really was, where I was just like, yeah, sure. And then everyone's just super normal about Spider running around with them.
Fucking
which,
Spider.
Again.
Sorry.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's do it
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Because honestly, I didn't bump on the beginning that much because I was just like, this is wacky, weird Avatar. We're back into it. But Spider and the introduction of Spider and the persistence of Spider and his whole look was definitely distracting.
Tarzan boy.
Avatar-zan.
Yeah. The dreadlocks, the loincloth.
They never gave him clothes, even though he was
never.
With humans.
Right. It's clearly cold in whatever that interrogation room that he's in. It's someone give him a blanket.
Sorry. Yes. Give him a blanket. Do you know in movies when two people are fighting and there's a third character, usually the helpless female because movies, who's just watching and can't, is just watching the fight, but is never doing anything. That felt like him for the entire movie, right? He's just I don't like that you guys are doing this, but I'm just going to stand here in my loincloth and watch for the entire movie.
Right.
Here's the thing. He actually has the potential to be maybe the most interesting character in this. He truly does. He was, he is the son of a soldier. He has no possibility of ever becoming a Na'vi, having a Na'vi body. It's just not in the cards for him. So he is stuck on Pandora as a human forever. And yet he was raised by the Na'vi. And there is this very real conflict within the character, potentially, about what does that mean for him? What does his life look like? What is his responsibility? What is his role? What world does he belong in? It's all really potentially interesting. And then the movie actually puts him in the position of having to navigate those two things. And at the same time, it manages not to be interested in it at all. It seems like the movie doesn't remotely care about who Spider is, what his state of mind is, what he feels about anything. He just seems to act however is convenient in any particular scene.
Welcome to the Avatar franchise.
Well, yeah, exactly right. But I think it's a little bit, you can see with some other characters, there's a little more character consistency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the movie is just so deeply uninterested in exploring any sort of inherent theme that the existence of Spider raises that I'm just so confused about his inclusion in this movie. And as to your point, Alex, you said his persistent thing. You're kind of talking about his look, but like his just persistent presence in the movie as being like a player in the game when the game has like
Moved
seemingly nothing to do with him in terms of theme. And again, Quaritch, like if something is going to happen with Quaritch, you got to set it up. Like it's got to mean something. There has to be a journey. There has to be little moments along the journey for Quaritch before he makes like a climactic decision. And there simply are not. Like watch, if you could, you would watch the scene on the beach where Quaritch is like torturing people.
Right.
And Spider's like, no, stop it. And Quaritch is like, completely ignoring him. Like, tie him up, get him out of here. Like, why wouldn't, if you're going to set up an arc with Quaritch, why wouldn't there be a moment where he seems to genuinely listen to what Spider has to say and seem moved and swayed by it? But there isn't.
There's no steps on the journey.
There's no steps. It's wild.
Well, it's super weird because I feel like it does the bookends of that arc like really well, actually,
Right.
where it like sets up like everything you're saying, Spider's unique place. He gets snatched by this person who turns out to be his father, kind of. Don't worry about it. So like that setup is really fascinating. By the end, he is making this choice to like save this person and like save his father. Like the bookends are there. It's just like, and I feel like care is put into those, but as you're saying, none of the work in between is done. And I think it's really interesting that like they hint at Quaritch being his father early and then just like confirm it like right away. And like Quaritch is like, oh yeah. Like everyone knows that like, oh, that's your kid. And like that could have been a reveal. That could have been something that played over time and Spider like learning that and revealing it. Like those beats could have been happening, but instead Spider gets snatched up and then hangs out off screen or hangs out and watches bad stuff, or finally like an hour and a half later is like, no, this is bad, you shouldn't do it, and then it doesn't matter.
Now you ram the boat, not while it was like trying to kill the whales.
The decision
Right.
to ram the boat is insane because it's like the deaths of dozens, if not hundreds of people. And he doesn't grapple with it at all, or like, it's just, it's so much.
Well, they're going to kill the Na'vi, so he is like choosing a side, I guess, at that moment. But
Yeah.
But then not.
Taking a
But
while,
then
yeah.
not.
Right.
It's a James Cameron movie with Kate Winslet. You got to ram the boat at some point.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
and actually, I was down with the Titanic ending. I was like, this looks fucking cool in 3D. I'm down.
I mean, well, yeah, what was fascinating about the third act is it was almost like the whole movie in microcosm, where I was like, I'm ready for this to be over. And it's going on longer than it needs to, but I'm still entertained by it in a frustrating way. But like, there's so many beats to we got to get them off the boat. Like,
It was almost comical, and they called it out in the movie. She's like, I'm
Yeah,
tied
when the
up
girl's
again.
like, I can't believe I'm tied up
right.
again. And I was
like,
you had to do
screw
it because,
you.
yeah.
It's like, I also can't believe you're tied up.
And she looks off screen, and then it pans over to the screenwriter who's like, "Sorry."
right. It feels like it
You're
was like a
8,
note
I don't know.
from
What
a
are we supposed to do
producer or
with you?
something.
Yeah.
But it's just like
Jesus.
it's like the greatest hits of Cameron third act actions, like just back to back to back to back to back. But it looked cool, except for So to talk
Frame
about
rate?
the technology stuff really quick. So if you see this movie in IMAX 3D, you are going to watch a variable frame rate version of this movie. So if you saw The Hobbit, the HFR high frame rate versions of it, then you might be familiar with this horrific technology where, movies are normally shown at 24 frames per second, which means you see 24 images flash in front of you every second. But you can go faster than that. Like video games can go into like the 200 and 300 frames per second. But movies should be at 24. Everyone knows that. God said that a long time ago. But
11th commandment,
yeah,
the first amendment to the commandments.
yeah.
Thou shalt not exceed 24 frames per second.
Right. But the problem with 24 frames per second is that it is like jittery. Motion looks a little like jumpy and jittery, which looks fine when you're watching a normal movie. But when you're watching it in 3D, that's really disorienting. And so having more frames when watching something in 3D makes for a much more pleasant 3D experience. But it can also look not like a movie anymore, because things that are like shot at 60 frames per second are like your home videos from 30 years ago or daytime TV soap operas. And so it ruins the magic. What Avatar did is it uses a variable frame rate where some of the time it's 24 frames per second, so normal film mode, but then it goes up to 48 frames per second, so doubling the frames per second, not going all the way to 60 or beyond, which is what the Hobbits did, so it's not as soap opera-y. And for the most part, I feel like this really solved my issue with the HFR, where when it kicked into higher frame rate, I was like, I appreciate this. The 3D is smoother. The visuals are gorgeous. All of the CGI is executed at such a high level that I don't have trouble believing what I'm seeing. And in the way that like you watch The Hobbit in 60 frames per second and you're like, that's a person in a costume pretending. But there were these weird moments that kicked in kind of in the last hour. And I want to know, listeners, if you had this experience also, where there were some shots that went from 48 frames per second back to 24 frames per second, but clearly weren't rendered in 48 frames per second because that would leave a different motion blur trail. So they ended up looking jitterier.
That's a new word. Shitty
Jitterier.
and jittery.
Right.
More jittery.
Jittier than the other 24 frames per second. And I found that extremely distracting, and it was very prevalent in that last third act sequence, as I know all of you noticed, and we're going to talk about also. So
I noticed a couple shots when during like some of the Quaritch like knife fighty stuff, or like with the kids at the end when he's like tying them up, they would cut to like a close up of him, and it would be a little bit stroby, the way the film
stroby
looked.
feeling.
And it was like, why is that like this right now? And you identified later that maybe it was filmed for high frame rate, and they decided in post to actually not make that part high frame rate
for completely puzzling reasons that I've yet to be able to detect.
Yeah, I'm thinking, because I don't recognize, like, I can't actually, I'm not a robot, but I am a sucker for high frame rate stuff. So like Gladiator or 28 Days Later, when it goes into those like action scenes where it just everything looks like so like shiny and I don't know what the word is, but just high frame rate,
right?
Oh, high shutter speed. That's right. Yeah. Well, okay. Good night, everyone.
But it had a similar like visceral effect.
Effect,
well, but I was noticing in this movie that sort of feeling sometimes where I was like, oh, I love the way this looks right now. But then there were other times, like I was saying earlier, where I felt just distracted by the way things looked. And maybe it was 24 frames a second during those moments or whatever. But it was this weird thing of feeling like 3D is supposed to be more immersive, and I felt less immersed sometimes, where I was like, I felt like sometimes I was looking at Photoshop layers that were moving, that were separated, and I was just like trying to make my brain go, this is a movie, these are characters who are talking to each other. But instead I'm like, why does this look like someone is holding up multiple pieces of paper far away from each other, and then there were other times where I was like, this looks so awesome, I'm having a blast right now, so I don't know what, like, if that was frame rate or what it was, but I just noticed having both those kind of disparate experiences during the movie.
What's interesting is I think it really helps that a lot of this movie is in the water, because the times when high frame rate did stand out to me as like not making it better were when we were up above ground in some of the early Act 1 stuff where they're like attacking the train, or there's like big, like chunky ships flying in the air or like landing or taking off. And when those are doing these big motions in high frame rate, it makes them feel like they're sped up slightly. So instead of the train crash feeling like chunky and heavy and weighty, it feels more light and toy-like. And then the big, gigantic airship feels like a toy more. And so I think, but when I was watching the underwater action scenes, when those kind of cool, like one-man subs were launching off, and that all felt perfect and good. And maybe because there is no weight down there. They're supposed to be weightless. And so in some ways, I wonder how much the water... I mean, I don't think this was the reason he did a water movie, but I wondered if it does lend itself to this variable frame rate thing in a way that other kinds of action scenes do not. And like, that might be why this felt so good.
There's exactly one reason why James Cameron makes water movies. Because James Cameron makes water movies.
Well, and he's, his like last portion of his life has been spent, in the water, scuba diving and going down to the bottom of the ocean and all that stuff. So he's obsessed. I also love the ocean. I'm obsessed with the ocean, and so that also probably helped with my love for this movie.
The two, real quick, since we were talking about it, the two things that looked for some reason mind-blowing to me was the glass of those one-man submarines.
Yes, the 3D felt perfect in a way that I haven't seen.
Right. And the surface of the water, not underwater, but just like the actual, when water turns white, whatever the term is for that. Like, for some reason, those were the things that just made me like completely tune into the movie and being like, yep, the things I don't like about the 3D are completely outweighed by the things that I love about it.
Where some of the shots where the outcast son is swimming with the whale, and you kind of like are rotating underwater, and the surface of the
like
water,
the money shot.
Right.
It's just like, it just looks so cool in 3D.
Come on now.
You might throw up, but also it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Well, because also water gives you like a plane, so as long as you're like nearby you're getting that 3-dimensional, so you're always oriented. It's a good place to use 3D.
And it's a good thing to call out, just like James Cameron, he's a really good filmmaker. He knows where to put the camera, how to use the technology to its fullest extent. There's a marriage of the technology and the craft. And it's not just like I made a movie and then slapped 3D on top of it. It's all of a piece, which is very impressive.
Yeah. All I was going to say about the technology is that I noticed technology was happening. Hey. No, there were definitely moments where I was like, I see that the frame rate is variable. I see that is happening. It is different in this shot than it is in that shot. And it looks different. I will say that, the fact that the movie is truly mostly animated in a lot of ways, it doesn't bother me. And I do want to say that for every single problem that I have with Spider, which is so many, that like his incorporation into essentially a completely digital movie is astounding.
It's insane. I really couldn't believe how well the humans were incorporated. It's wild. Like he's in so much of it, again, for confusing story reasons, but at the same time, I'm like, you're just showing off at a certain point, James Cameron, right? Yeah.
Is he just in this scene to show off how good you are at putting him in this completely digital environment, interacting with these completely digital characters? Because if so, it's working. I am impressed. I would never know that this is not like, it has this like fantasy, like animated movie, like thing where it transports you to another world. And then to see a human, at the weird human scale that weird humans are in the Avatar world, walking around with his breathing mask on and his whole deal, you're just like, okay. I mean, and part of me wonders too, is the reason we can see all of Spider's skin all the time in contrast is to show off how good you are at lighting that and digital blue people's skin at the same time. Like, because if so, you are doing that. I'm very impressed.
I mean, it makes every shot harder. Like, you could have just been entirely digital, but instead you did a lot of work to get Spider into the shot. Which again, narratively shrugs, but I mean, like basically every shot in this is just like the CGI could not be better. It's just like 10 out of 10, gorgeous execution. And this is a 3.5 hour movie. Like, this is an insane feat that has been accomplished on a technical level. And I feel like that just cannot be overstated. It's very impressive. Okay, well, why don't we go around and say what lessons we're going to take from Avatar, The Way of Water. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, first, before we get into that, I need to talk about the plan to have the bad guys be Na'vi, which they're like, we can sneak in undetected if we're Na'vi. Right, so like that's why our USB brains have been uploaded to those bodies. And then they just like drop down on ships in military gear with guns. And then, when that doesn't go so hot, then they're like, okay, well, now we're going to infiltrate them, which means we got to go full Na'vi. We even have to talk like them. And then that doesn't ever go anywhere. The complete thing, nothing makes sense.
They just go and burn the village.
Right. This is basically there are humans and they are trying to kill the Na'vi. And like it's all the same things as the first movie, but they're like, but what if they are Na'vi? Okay, why? Because that's what their bodies are now. All right.
It's so the same bad guy can be in it.
Yet another really interesting theme the movie is in no way interested in. It's like, yeah, what would this mean for you if you were an incredibly racist person and then you woke up in the body of the people that you hate the most, and then you realize this is the only body you'll ever have again. So anyway,
maybe over the course of the next 4 movies.
But I believe you asked me what my lesson was, which is just, I mean, we've touched on it a bit, but like just the pacing, like what a really cool example of a movie that just is always moving in the right direction and at the right time. And when it does take time to, you know, the Blue Planet kind of moments or whatever, it's exciting, it's interesting. But there's this interesting trend right now. There are a ton of movies that are over 2.5 hours right now, but I've noticed it's not just that they're long. It's like 90-minute movies, you know, Elf or The Truman Show, movies we've recently covered. They're just like, here's one character who is existing for like a week and having a character arc, right? 2.5-hour movies are like, here's 20 characters and here's like 17 years of their lives. You know, it's just like the longer the movies are, the more ambitious they're trying to get about what they're trying to cover. And I will say, for as long as this movie was, there weren't a ton of characters. I always felt like there were like, it knew sort of, here are the main characters, here are the secondary characters, here are the tertiary characters. And every time it cut, it was just like, here's a character, you know what's going on. Here's something you care about. Kind of, Michael, you were talking about like the emotional storytelling, like whatever this scene is, it's going to be an interesting scene. It's going to matter to you. And I just always felt like I was not going like, wait, who is this guy again? Other than like maybe the two humans, like the whaler humans, you know, Jermaine Clement and the other guy, where I was kind of like, oh, it's so late in, I don't really know what they're doing and why they're here or whatever. But between Quaritch and the Sully family and the teens, I was just like, I'm always interested in these people and we're always just going bang, 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 bang between them. And we're not sort of doing these big landscapey, look at all this stuff scenes for the most part. We're doing that in the middle of a character scene. So like this kid meets the whale. Now we're going to go ride the whale around for 5 minutes and look at stuff, right? But like it's part of a character.
Great time to go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
There was like a whole movement of people that went during that moment.
Like, we can tell it's going to be the Blue Planet part right now.
Right. But that's like within a character. I mean, speaking of 20 Days Later, we talked about how like they'll do the sit down moments in kind of almost the middle, like, oh, we've seen that building, light in the building, we got to go to it. But then we get there and now we're going to sit down and talk for a second. And now the action's going to happen again, as opposed to we're kind of wandering and we're meandering through the world for a little while. And this movie was just always like cutting from one thing to the next. And if it did want to take time, it took time kind of in the middle of those character moments rather than putting them at, just putting random big look at the landscape shots in the middle of nowhere when it felt like, okay, now I really do want to go to the bathroom. I just was very impressed at how engaged I felt through this entire movie. And I guarantee you that will not happen when or if I watch this movie a second time, but it worked really well for me the first time. So I think it's a cool movie to study in terms of just the focus of the characters, but also the actual like structure of the pacing of the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are definitely a lot of like directorial lessons to take away from this, which I'm still thinking about as I scramble to formulate my lesson. So perhaps we'll come back to this after we go to Alex. What's your lesson?
So I was thinking about, why did this movie actually like make me shed a tear in a way that the first movie did not? And I think two things. I cared about some characters. I really did not care about any characters in the first movie. And I think when I think about the first movie, the heart of that movie, from a character perspective, I think is supposed to be the love story. But like, I don't really plug into that love story. There's the usual Pocahontas arc of she kind of hates him and he's an idiot, but then she trains him and he becomes one of the people and now they're in love and now they're having sex underneath the spirit tree. But I never plug into that storyline. I actually do find these kids really interesting. Kiri, the Sigourney Weaver character, is really interesting. The kid who's kind of like the black sheep of the family, when he kind of finds his whale friend, like that is engaging and interesting in a way that I was never engaged with Jake Sully in the first film. So there's characters that I'm actually interested in and care about and intrigued by. And then as far as the environment aspect, the nature aspect, in the first movie, the big crisis is the literal like exploding of a giant tree, like the home tree. And, that is that big moment, and it's meaningful in theory because it's like the home of the people. It's a giant tree. We don't like giant trees being cut down, but it all felt more symbolic and like an idea in that movie, which is like, yes, I agree. It is sad to blow up the big tree. In this movie, like I felt like these whales were characters, and like I like whales. Who doesn't like whales with like babies? And we have characters.
The fact that the mama whale they kill has a baby.
Yeah, it's so manipulative, but it works.
Come on,
but it works.
Theme.
Sure.
The tree didn't have a baby.
Is it though?
I don't know. Sure.
I refuse to give that a thematic pass. That's just straight emotional manipulation. It is not a theme.
But the fact that basically there's the nature thing that is being destroyed are like sentient characters that have relationships with other characters that we like and know. And I think that made it all, once again, it's like, I feel like this movie hit for me in a way the first movie did not. It was doing all the same beats, but with characters I actually liked and with nature embodied in sentient beings that I could relate to. So I think my lesson is, if you want me to be engaged emotionally and shed a tear, it's good if I care about things like as characters. And so if nature is going to be a character in your movie, like making an animal actually a character and not just like a symbolic tree is really going to get you the arc you want. And this movie totally did it. I love the whale subplot. It was so well done. So I think hopefully he takes that lesson forward in his next movies, which is like, we care about animals, things that are closer to us in the evolutionary chain. And so if we're going to keep doing this environmental thing, give us more animal friends.
Yes, absolutely. But I will add that like, the movie had a weird focus issue, right? Where it's like the brother who dies is not the brother we're actually spending time with. And the sister whale, or I forget exactly what the term was, but Kate Winslet's like sister whale, whatever. Like we saw that whale for like 1 second. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, oh no, that whale's dead. So it's like, I want the specific things that we're supposed to care about to have more focus, but I totally agree with what you're saying on like a broader level, 100%.
Well, and I think you're hitting on something that I've been trying to articulate this whole time, Alex, which is that this movie is in many ways attempting to do something that has like a more deep human emotional core. And like, if you think about the first Avatar as being this grand archetypal, symbolic, allegorical story, then, we talked about how the characters should be one-dimensional, right? And it's like, that's part of the whole deal that you're kind of getting on this like grand scale of a big archetypal story like this. They're not supposed to be, morally complex or like dealing with any of the issues that we sort of deal with. They're just supposed to be like operating on this grander plane. And I think that that is true. And this movie is attempting to do something much more interesting in a lot of ways with the character relationships, as we've been touching on. And a whole wide range of themes also that the characters potentially raise. The most interesting, as I said right up top, is parenting and what it means to be a parent and a father versus a mother, which this movie brings that up a couple times and then immediately does nothing with.
It answers the question very specifically about what a father's role is.
Right.
Well, and I think maybe that's another thing that I was missing in this too, which is like we talked about how the first Avatar is a subversion of the male myth with the female myth, right? Like the female myth at the heart of Avatar ends up supplanting this like militaristic conquering vision of like what a hero is, right? And yeah, this myth story. And there's like so little of that conversation here about like masculinity and femininity and like what the value systems that are at play here. Like there's so little of that. It's attempting to tell a personal story about revenge maybe and fatherhood kind of, and then trying to have its cake and eat it too by doing this like but also the planet thing. But it's just, it turns into this huge mess where the first Avatar, you might not have responded to it emotionally, but at least it knew what it was. And I'm not at all convinced that this movie really knows what it is in terms of genre. But again, I have problems. And I can't watch movies like a normal person and be entertained by them. I need them to fit into thematic, and I need them to have themes.
I mean, yeah, and I think as a writer, as a creator, you should be asking yourself those questions and looking for those things in movies. And I agree that like if someone asks me like, what is this movie like about? I don't know that I'd be able to like succinctly articulate it other than like don't like be gooder than being bad generally.
Well, just to highlight a missed opportunity, if this movie is about parenting, let's say, and like motherhood versus fatherhood, or even just parenting more broadly, then the fact that the mother whale is the one that's killed would be thematically significant. And the movie would be specifically interested in that fact. They touch on the fact that she won't leave her baby behind, and that's why they're targeting her, right? She won't swim faster. She can't get away because she won't leave her baby behind. But it's just mentioned briefly in passing. Mm-hmm. It's not made a big deal of, and we don't see the mother whale trying to protect her baby or trying to like push her baby out of the way or, you know, like any other thing that could be a part of that parenting theme, that sort of protective theme that could have been incorporated into that sequence. And the movie just let it just drift away, that potential for another thematic moment. Why? Like, Neytiri almost kills Spider. Like, she puts a knife to his throat and almost cuts his throat or just like stabs him right in the chest. But the movie is like, she was basically his adoptive mother for a lot of his life. And the movie mentions earlier that he's never quite been like, to her, he's like always sort of been sort of outcasted from the family. But the movie spends no other time on it.
Right.
Like, what would that choice mean for her as a parent if she killed someone else's child? What would that mean for her as a parent? Why is the movie not interested in that? It put her in the position of making the choice.
Yeah.
It put all the parents in the position of making the choice. So what does the choice mean? We need to know. From it, my brain is exploding. The pieces are all here and they don't make a puzzle.
Right.
We get very little, shamelessly little Neytiri time. Shamefully little.
Oh,
is the thing. Yes.
It's egregious how little Neytiri we have in this movie.
But I will say I'm adding her to the triumvirate of Ripley protecting Newt and Sarah Connor protecting John Connor and Neytiri stealthing up to like, you know, go like, I'm just like, you know what, James Cameron, like your badass mom's just doing whatever they will. Sarah Connor running down the hall with her little, you know, police baton. I'm just like, I'm here for it. Yep.
The moment the movie feels like it is something or saying something is in that crosscut sequence you mentioned, Brian, where all the kids are saving the parents. So if that's what the whole movie's building up to, you're right, Trisha. Why hasn't there been more along the way to kind of culminate in that moment? And I mean, and there's plenty of setup with like kids that, you know, a kid that feels weird, Kiri, who something's kind of wrong with her, but that ends up being the thing that saves part of the family. And you've got the kid who's, you know, the black sheep who has actually on his own learned survival strategies and learned wisdom about this world they live in. He can now use to save his father. So it's all there, but I agree. It doesn't feel like all of a piece in the way that you always want from a movie. Or that
Right.
ending feels inevitable instead of like oh, nice, we have like this kind of a scene. I didn't expect this to happen. It didn't feel inevitable. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, I was desperately trying to like reverse engineer that moment where I was going like, oh, this is supposed to be the moment in the movie where I realized this is what the movie was about the whole time. So I was like desperately going back through and trying to like look at all the scenes and go, was this all leading up? And I was like, no, it really wasn't. But I like this sequence by itself, but I don't feel like it's a big payoff of what the movie was trying to say all along.
Here's another interesting theme that the movie raises that then it just leaves there to do nothing with. So the whale that's an outcast is an outcast because he killed somebody, and killing is wrong in the whale culture, no matter how justified. And then the whale makes the decision to kill a whole lot of other somebodies
Right.
At the end of the movie. Is the movie interested in that? No. Not even
I didn't even
tiny
pick up on that until you said
No.
that right now.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
The infuriating part is that the movie throws a bunch of really interesting balls in the air.
Yep.
Like actually good things, and
Yeah.
then like drops half of them or more than half of them.
Especially because that kid, Loak, the outcasted kid, should be wrestling with the same sort of idea, right? Like, what does it mean that, he's trying to solve his problems with violence? We know that. He's impulsive. He wants to run into the battle. He runs into the battle with the train at the beginning where he's not supposed to be. And then he gets hurt, and that's his fault. And like, they have that whole thing where he's fighting the bullies, and like, so is violence the answer? What is that? Does he have a lesson to learn from this whale that broke the code? What? No, apparently not. No, that's not a thing we're going to talk about in any way, actually. Wow. That's my lesson.
It's a great lesson. And yeah, like characters are usually in stories to help aid another character along their journey, but there isn't really any of that. Again, like there's a lot of setting up things and like all the pieces are there on the board, and then we kind of just threw the board in the air and it's not where
I
they
think
land.
you're right, Michael. I think I'm getting a feeling the more we talk, the more this is like it's all set up.
I think it's a lot of exposition and a lot of setup, and ultimately that's why I find it impressive that something that has so little within it and is so long is so entertaining.
Yeah. But what you definitely want when you wait 13 years for a sequel is it to set up the next movie.
Right. Well, at least these ones are like already shot.
Right. Two of them are.
Yeah.
I think they're shooting the third one or the fourth
the
one.
third one's like in the can.
Right.
Yeah.
2 and 3 were shot together. They're currently shooting number 4.
Let's
and then
take bets.
5.
Let's make a poll in the Discord what we think the theme of Avatar the new Avatar movies is going to emerge to be.
Bearing seeds.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's going to be about parenting? Do you think it's going to be about violence? Do you think it's going to be more of an environmental angle? Let's talk.
Definitely the kids thing. Like you identified it earlier, Trisha, like the kids kind of taking over or like, becoming the adults.
Well, and maybe, on a saga-wide scale, the movement will be from male warrior myth to female myth, but we'll just have to wait years to see if that's...
Very curious.
I mean, if Kiri's like parent is the planet
Sure.
itself,
Right.
I feel like she's going
that
to
would
be a
be
big
the
deal.
ultimate female myth
Yeah.
kind of story.
literally
yeah.
like the daughter of Mother Nature, essentially. Yeah.
Or it's Shmi Skywalker. There was no father. Yeah. lot of prequel.
Midi-chlorin's birth.
Yeah.
Michael, your lesson.
Yeah. So really quick, Alex, you were mentioning like it's cool to have like sapient characters that you care about, that have relationships that make you invested in them. And that's true. And I /hate that this movie is just like, yeah, whales can talk. We've decided now, like, here's a subtitle. This whale is now communicating
Here's a
with this
papyrus
child.
subtitle for you.
Right. In the world of this movie, it worked. And then lets you have that, like, develop that relationship now. So sometimes maybe just throw up a subtitle as if the person can know whatever it is they're talking. It could be a rock. Throw up a rock subtitle that's talking to them.
It was such like a just I don't give a shit move to just
Right.
not even teach us like the kid doesn't go back and learn how to speak whale from somebody else. He just now knows what the sounds mean.
And I think so ever since I read the words emotional storytelling, I've been like really fixated on it and like trying to pull it apart because I think it's an extremely powerful tool, but like any extremely powerful tool is a bit of a double-edged sword. And so I think being in tune with every scene should be emotional, should be a turning point. You should find the thing that's dramatic in it and execute on that is like storytelling 101 and is great. And I feel like James Cameron is great at that. I have a weird faith now that he could direct the phone book and find a way to make me feel things about it somehow. But I feel like it can also be, like we've been saying, like emotionally abusive and like manipulative, which is kind of a weird thing to say because that's what stories are. It's like you're manipulating an audience to feel a thing. But I feel like there is this kind of ineffable threshold. And like you were saying, Trisha, like the whale, of course the whale has a baby. Why? Because it'll make you feel stronger about it. Does it mean anything outside of that? No, it's just going to make you feel stronger about it. And like that can breed resentment. Like it's almost like in a horror movie where it's like, oh, you're just going to show me the most shocking possible thing just to get a reaction out of me. Like, yes, you can get a reaction out of me if you show me like a puppy being stabbed. Like, great, good job. What are you doing with that? Right. And so I'm like, I just like watching the movie, I was kind of constantly struggling with this. And the Discord, there was also recently a conversation about like Whiplash, and someone was like, it's not a good movie. And it made me think about like Whiplash, I feel like is emotionally manipulative. Like I have those moments in it where I'm like, I am feeling like emotionally abused, but the character is feeling emotionally abused. Like it's all these tools are used to increase that subjectivity and identification with the protagonist. And it's serving a greater purpose. And I feel like in this movie, for all of the thematic and plot reasons that we talked about that are relatively empty, I ultimately walked away feeling like I was beaten into enjoying this movie rather than being invited to enjoy this movie. Either way, I enjoyed this movie, but I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of optionality in it for me. And so there's a lot of power within that to be studied and extracted, but with great power comes great responsibility.
Like extracting whale brain juice.
Yes. on a brainium? Is that what you called it, Brian?
Blood obtainium.
Blood obtainium.
Yeah.
I like your version better. Michael,
yeah, I agree. Yours is better on a brainium.
I was feeling that when they killed the mama whale. I was like, I am feeling this hard and I'm like kind of angry about it, like how like sad this is. And the thing that made me okay with it ultimately was it made me also be with the ocean Na'vi people in their reaction to it. Because it was like the movie emotionally abused me into feeling super sad. So when Kate Winslet is like super horrified and super sad, I'm not like looking at it. I'm like with her. And so it's that weird thing where it's like, yes, it's abuse, but like it did help me connect with the like characters and their motivations. So it's such a complicated thing.
And it should be said that the performances here are, for the most part, really outstanding. And they go a long way toward this enjoyment that, you feel the engagement that you feel when you watch it. Is like James Cameron has always written nothing more than perfectly serviceable dialogue, which is fine. Like, he's not trying to write anything more artful than that. And it takes heavy lifting to and lots of talent to make pretty flattened, serviceable dialogue engaging and make it feel like there's an emotional core to a character that is very one-dimensional, actually. And there's a lot of work being done here that's very, very good on the part of the performers, especially because a lot of, almost all of them are doing it in motion capture. So, and shout out to Kate Winslet for holding her breath for 7 minutes.
That's not possible.
She broke Tom Cruise's record.
Yep.
For holding her breath longest while filming a scene. He had it for that tank heist, in the Mission Impossible movie. But then, she did it longer.
She did it longer, even though her face is not in the movie.
No, not even a tiny bit.
Completely unnecessary.
Why do you have to do any of this? Yeah.
You really didn't. You truly didn't. But great job.
Kudos.
Kate Winslet.
But,
yeah. I mean, and clearly whatever their process was, like all of those performances shine through, like you're saying, Trisha, from the actors through the mocap, through the animators, to the rendering, to the screen. And it's extremely impressive. All of us can really believably understand what it looks like when a Navi is like, "What up, bro?" Like, "Oh, what a dumbass!" Like, you might. Anyway, this has been our conversation about Avatar: Way of Water. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the show and listening to us talk about this movie. We have questions that were brought up. Head over to the Discord. Let us know in the Discord and in the comments on Patreon. And we will see you next year. I hope you have a wonderful holidays and a happy new year. And we will see you in 2023.
Bye, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.